Hi everyone, I am Saikaran, the AR guy. If you're watching me for the first time on this channel, you better subscribe because I make videos on augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, on spatial computing. I always wanted to make a video on this particular topic, but I always been lazy. But fortunately, one of my followers on Instagram messaged me saying, "Bro, you have worked on different projects, you have worked with a lot of companies and you have a lot of experience. Why don't you create a video where you explain the end-to-end process or the pipeline from getting the requirements from the client to delivering the project? Why don't you take us through the entire step? How does different companies deal with it in a different way? Why don't you explain that?" Because a lot of the courses or the videos or the articles on in the internet only talks about the basics of game engines or how to build basic games or AR VR. So I thought it's high time I make this video, showcasing the actual ground reality and what actually happens from start to end. So I have noted some points. Let me start with that. Okay, so before getting into the actual details, just to make it easier for you, so there are a lot of different types of companies work on creating AR VR modules or applications or games. So I've categorized it into different types. So the first one being a typical IT or a software company. Companies like TCS, Infosys, Happiest Minds, L&T Infotech, a lot of other companies comes into this sector, into this category. The way you approach the problem, the way you approach the projects differs drastically from company to company. So it is important to categorize these companies into different categories so that it is easier for you to understand. I only mentioned the companies like global MNCs, but there are a lot of small to medium players also which kind of follow the same process. Just that I haven't mentioned names of it, but imagine it as a typical software or an IT firm. So where they have dedicated teams working on AR VR technologies. Even within these companies, among these companies, the process might vary because these companies might be operating in different verticals, different sectors. For example, most of these AR VR technologies has came into existence or kind of took over around 2016, 2017, around these years. So which means these companies are already been in IT or software from many years. They are already dealing with a lot of clients in a particular vertical or a sector. Let's say company A is dealing with automobile companies, making them mobile applications, making websites for them, making designs for the cars, making ads for them and all that. Now what happens is around 2016-17 these companies saw there's a growth in these cutting edge technologies like AR VR. So they started forming teams and kind of build POCs. POCs means proof of concepts. If a particular company is already operating in a vertical, so it becomes easier for it to convert projects from that particular existing clients rather than going and pitching to the new clients. So most of the companies are working, let's say they have 10 projects, 7 projects might be coming from the existing clients, and then as the time passes that ratio increases. Okay, right now at the starting it might be 70-30, going forward it might be 50-50, and then it will be spread out to a lot of other verticals. Clients goes to companies like this and say, "This, I want an AR or VR project. These are the details, this is the requirement, do this." So what happens from there? Once you get the requirements from the client, you will have a meeting with all the stakeholders. When I say all the stakeholders, I'm not only talking about a dedicated AR VR developer team who's working on engines like Unity and Unreal. I'm talking about entire team which takes to develop an AR VR application, like people from modeling team working on softwares like 3ds Max, Maya and Blender, people from UI UX, and especially if the company is primarily into e-learning, they might also have a team called instructional designers or ID. So a ID job is to dig through all the documents shared by the clients and create a storyboard where everything is clearly mentioned from start to end. Let's say a client comes to saying, "I want to build this assembly module for my workforce where we want to train them in VR application how to assemble this," or it might be from a medical client where he's talking about a particular medical procedure. So all these steps will be clearly listed down and will be shared as a document with the client just with the confirmation. So once he confirms what are the data that we have provided, and then same will be shared to the development team where they have to look at those details and build the applications. So even the storyboard varies from company to company, but most of the time the way it works is you'll have the steps listed down, and then you will have the respective voiceovers or the media files or the procedures or the tools or the images listed down in the in the roles, so that you'll get some idea on what steps to be followed. So even before getting there, while the discussion phase itself, sometimes what happens is you go through the requirements and you figure out maybe augmented reality makes more sense than virtual reality, which has client asked for. So you go back to the client and say, so for the requirement whatever that you have shared, we think AR makes sense more than VR in this scenario, and you kind of explain why it is, and then once he agrees, and then you proceed with the details. So now when all the stakeholders are there, most of the discussion is around what kind of hardware to be used and what would be the time it would take to, deliver this application, what would the budget. So let's start with the hardware. So while selecting the hardware, you have to consider a lot of points, whether this is being used in a high scale where they have to procure multiple hundreds of VR headsets, or it's more about a standalone experience where they are going to install it in one of the locations, maybe a showroom or at an hospital, at the training center. So depending on that, you kind of specify the hardware, saying for these kind of setups, maybe you go with PC based. For these kind of use cases, go with standalone. So once the client agrees with that, the project kickstarts. So from here, what happens is, let's say if you're a modeling team, let's get into each team and describe how they work. Let's start with modeling team. Let's say you are a team of 5 members, and you need to, this application is all about building a trailing module for how to disassemble an engine or some machinery on the shop floor. Now the first point is you have to have that engine or the machinery in the first place. Even again here, there are multiple ways of getting that. So one is, easiest form is where you ask the client to share the CAD data of the machinery, where you can convert into the format where Unity engine or Unreal engine supports, and then you work on top of it. But most of the times for companies like software companies, the clients won't share CAD data. Instead of that, they share references of the machines like photos or videos from multiple angles. So modeling teams keeps that as a reference and create these models from the scratch. While modeling these machinery, they will split the task among themselves. For example, let's say a machine has 40 parts. It's not necessary that one single person has to make the entire machinery. So they will strategically divide, you do the 10 parts, I do 13 parts, this guy will do 20 parts. So, and then at the end, they combine it and then they hand it over to the developers. So while they were modeling from the scratch, developer gets some buffer time. So meanwhile, he, as a developer or a developer team, you figure out what kind of SDKs to be used, whether it's going to be a crash platform or not, whether it's only on a particular device, or what kind of interactions that you want to implement, whether it's hand tracking or it's what kind of UI that you want to do, what kind of design patterns. You figure out all this stuff. So by the time modeling teams give you the output, you will have 100% clarity on how are you going to approach the project, and also you will have done few mechanisms with some placeholders or dummy objects. So this is how it works. And then you also have UI UX team. So even with UI UX team, most of the people are not aware of spatial UI. Most of them are coming from conventional UI development. So in the initial days, we take a lot of time. Companies or teams take a lot of time explaining things to UI people and making them, because they are also not at fault, because they haven't experienced any technologies like this. So we make them try all these VR headsets, and then they'll get some idea. You fight, you argue, and then you settle on one particular kind of UI, and then you go from there. In today's time, you have a lot of UI prototyping tools like ShapeSexor and Busy, but back then it was not that easy. One more point here is, so if you're getting started as a 3D artist and want to join a team who are actually working on AR VR projects, it is highly important for you to also learn few basics of the game engines that you're going to end up working with. A lot of the times what happens is, instead of just sharing the 3D models as just raw files like FBX or OBJ, what happens is companies or the teams expect the other person to import the 3D models into Unity and export it as a package where it will be very easy for the developers to integrate. So it will be very useful if you know a bit of Unity and Unreal, how to import, at least the part of where you import these assets, assign materials and textures, exporting it as a package to the Unity. So once every team has shared the deliverables like 3D models and textures from the modeling team and the UI from UI UX team, and few audio or a video in depending on the application or solution, you as a developer sit down and build that application. And while building that application itself, you iterate and test a lot. Most of the companies might not have a dedicated XR testing team. So most of the time developers do a lot of testing, but one problem that developers face is they are already well versed and very familiar with these technologies. So what's very easier for them, what's very natural for them might be very difficult for others. So it's always good to make these VR applications tested by other teams. One more point that I would like to add here is, even though it's a little off topic, especially if you're working in AR VR companies or AR VR related teams, at least in the early stages of your career, it's highly important for you to go to office, sit with the team and develop these applications. So that's how you get the cross-functional team knowledge. Otherwise it's very difficult to get this knowledge. I was very fortunate that while I was working there was no work from home. So I'm not talking about experienced candidates. If you got more than 3 or 4 years of experience, then you're good to work from home. But if you're starting out, as even for the developers, it is important to go to office and sit with the modeling team. So that's how you get the rapport. That's how you get the rapport with the modeling team, and you figure out. So especially with game engines and AR VR, there is no right or wrong way. There are multiple ways which you can achieve a single objective. So you will be only able to get the best and efficient method to the problem only when you have that synergy between the teams. So that is a really highly underrated point that I want to highlight. Okay, so going back to the topic, so once you develop it and you test it and you release the beta to the client, and then you will incorporate all the feedback that has been given to you by the client, and then you deliver it. And based on the companies, you will also support it going forward. Some of the companies give you some 6 months warranty or support like that, and post that it's gone. I hope everything was clear until this point. Now let's get into the other kind of companies. Now coming to the other category of companies which are not software or IT companies, but maybe OEMs of automobiles, maybe manufacturing company, maybe oil and gas, maybe companies like AstraZeneca or other pharma companies. A lot of these companies also have in-house XR. I think it is better to say digital teams rather than XR teams, because there are very few exceptions. There are only few companies which have dedicated in-house XR team, but most of the other companies might have innovation teams or digital teams or digitalization teams as part of their digitization initiatives. So in companies like these, everything that you have learned and shared until now doesn't matter. It's completely gets disrupted. Now you have to learn a lot of things, you have to unlearn a lot of things. All of a sudden everything changes, starting from process, pipeline, flow, everything changes. This is more like a one-man army now, because most of the companies, they might have a digital team, but they will have 1 or 2 specialists from each technology vertical. Maybe you might have one guy from AR, you might have one guy from IoT, you might have one guy from automation, one guy from Python. You got it right. So you have different complementary skills as a team, where you look at the use cases and you get the problem statements and see how we can leverage these emerging technologies to solve them. Now you're not an XR developer anymore. You are a problem solver now. So now you have to handle everything, starting from 3D modeling to developing the applications to testing the applications, UI UX, all these you have to. Even in fact, on top of that, you also have to handle project management. You have to handle multiple vendors who are developing AR/VR solutions for you. All of a sudden, now you become that guy who talks to these vendors and handle these projects. Which means back then, in the previous companies, in the software companies, where you are getting all these details from the client, right? So the person who was sharing the details from the client side, now you become that person. But only difference is, as a specialist, you also know the core technologies. So which means you are better at doing things and you are efficient than typical guy who only knows the management part. You're better at this because you also know the tech part of it. So you know what kind of files to be shared, in which formats to be shared, and you will be at a better position to communicate the problem statement in a better way, so that you save a lot of time and money there. So this is where a lot of cutting edge AI tools comes into play, where you have a lot of tools like Bezi, ShapesXR, Meshy, where you can create 3D models out of text. You can use tools like Figma to create UI screens and all that without depending on a team. One more key important difference I would like to highlight here is, since you are part of an organization, since you are part of the OEM, since you are part of the in-house team, you will have first-hand access to all the data of the company, unlike the previous case where they won't show you the proprietary data or CAD models. Now you don't have to create models from scratch because you already have the CAD data with you. Now it's a matter of how are you going to bring this CAD data into real-time game engines like Unity or Unreal or Twinmotion or any other software for that matter. Because most of these engines don't support CAD formats, so that's where plugins like Simplygon, Pixie and Datasmith comes into the play, where you can convert these sad gray 3D models, CAD models into FBX, or using the plugins you can directly import into Unity or Unreal. In the previous example, as discussed, in companies like software and IT firms, their USP is beautifying the technology, a better UI UX, better materials, photorealistic rendering, but they lack in the core procedure or core engineering data or the metadata. Whereas here you get a lot of metadata along with the CAD data, so you can leverage it a lot. Even here there are a lot of companies operating in different verticals or sectors, like as I told before, a company might be working in pharma, a company might be working in oil and gas, one in manufacturing. For example, I worked in Nokia as part of the in-house team which is into manufacturing. Even here the process varies among them. A company who is primarily into manufacturing might not have CAD data because the machinery that they are working or they are procuring from some other OEMs. So here you have to create models from scratch, but few of the models we might have access to. So a lot of companies works with different softwares. Even among the CAD softwares, you have Revit, you have Navisworks, you have SketchUp, you have AutoCAD, you have S3D, E3D, a lot of applications depending on the vertical that you are in. But ultimately, using these tools like Pixie and Simplygon, you would be able to convert these into a format which Unity or Unreal supports. Along with the metadata, you can leverage this and build crazy applications. Even with here, one more important key point is, if you already have an academic background, let's say if you're getting into manufacturing and you have a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and you also know XR, then you have an unfair advantage, I would say, on other people, because even though you're not working as a mechanical engineer, you know the terms, you know the terminology, so it becomes easier for you to understand terms and figure out use cases, connect the dots. Otherwise, for non-engineering people, it might be not that easy to connect the dots, saying, oh, so this is how engineering companies work, so maybe this kind of hardware or this kind of use case might be very useful or might add very value. Only people who have certain academic background or subject matter expertise can only leverage that there. Again, if you have mechanical engineering and you are getting into the pharma sector, maybe you can utilize something, but you have medical background there, and all on top of, if you have XR, you will be in a better position to utilize it. So the point that I'm trying to say is, so if you have a particular background with you, at least in terms of study, or maybe you have worked a couple of years in some particular sector and you want to switch into XR, make sure that you are able to leverage the expertise that you already have, so that you are in the better position. One more key skill while getting into companies like this is communication, because a lot of times what happens is, when you are getting in as an XR specialist or XR AR/VR developer, you don't know the actual process, core knowledge of that sector. In the same way, they don't know these, they are not very well familiar with these technologies, what these technologies can do, what are the possibilities of these technologies, what are the use cases of these technologies. So you have to sit with them and talk with them. You have to eliminate all the barriers. You have to be very honest and open with them. You should be in a position where you are able to articulate or communicate all these technologies in a better manner, where they can understand it easily without any jargons. And you also have to build a rapport with the team, where you also get as much as knowledge from the subject matter experts on the core vertical, so that that's when you will be able to connect the dots. One more advantage what happens when you open up is, you will be surprised to know that a particular thing has been done in this way, which takes a lot of time, whereas with these technologies that it can be like done in minutes. In the same way, you might be doing a particular thing all these years in certain way, and you will be surprised to know that you can save a lot of time by following whatever that they are doing right now. So that is really important. So that's where you also get the project management skills, and that's where you get exposed to a lot of multiple different teams. So it's an advantage for you. One more important, maybe it might sound silly to you, but thing is, a lot of these companies are really strict about IT policies, getting the right licenses. So there might be some delay. So you might have to go through certain process. It might not be things might not happen quickly like this, like how it happens in IT or software companies. So they have to follow certain standards because they might be handling sensitive data, right? I think I have covered most of the points. These are the broadly you can kind of divide these companies into these two categories which I have explained in detail, and then you also have dedicated companies which works on games and all that. Yeah, I don't have much experience on the gaming end, but they operate similar to like the first company, like this software company, but then they will have lot more teams and lot more roles specialized. For example, in our case, I haven't talked to you about maybe 10-member or 6-member team who are only working on lighting, who are only working on creating textures, who are only working on creating characters, who are only working on creating animations. So all these will be there in gaming studios and or the AAA companies who are working on games. I think that's it for the video. I think I have covered most of the points. If you think I have missed out on anything, you can comment down, and I'll definitely reply. I read each and every company, and I try 100% to reply to every comment. Also, let me know what kind of videos that you want me to do going forward. I will also pick the topics of my videos from your comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Particularly share this video with all of your friends or colleagues, who are wondering or who want to know or who want to get into AR VR and who want to switch from particular current jobs to AR VR, and they want to know how to approach it, how different companies approach it, what are the kind of advantages that you can have when you're switching the career. So that's it for the video. Bye bye.